We're talking with Dr. Keith Edwards, and we're discussing this whole issue of judgment. Jesus really warns us about this. He says the way we judge people is the way we're going to be judged, and this is an area that we need to be careful. Well, why is this such a crucial area?
The process of judgment, as I observe it with people in relationship to one another, and even with relationship to themselves, frankly, is that judgment triggers internal responses of fear and shame, and those primal affects, those primal experiences of fear and shame, set off a cascade of events and reactions that produce tension, alienation, conflict.
So in essence, it starts, the dominoes begin to fall when we have this judgment. And I know you've said it really goes all the way back to the beginning in Genesis.
Right, yeah. I mean, you find after Adam and Eve sin, after they disobey, the primal affects that they experience in sequence, and God shows up, is fear and shame. And how do they cope with it? Blame and cover up. Okay. And that's the dynamic.
You see this a lot because you do a lot of marriage counseling.
Right.
How does this affect couples when they are having marital issues?
Marital issues, at the most general level, involve somebody saying, you're doing something I don't like, or you're not doing something I want you to do. And so there's a difference in the satisfaction of their desires or expectations. And the next step is to say, there's something wrong with you for not doing that. And the attitude is a judgment about something's wrong with the other person for doing that. It's called a criticism. And we think, well, constructive criticism, that's good. Not really, because criticism has inherent a judgment of the person, not the behavior that they're doing or the action.
So it's not, I'm okay, you're okay.
No, it's I'm okay and you're a jerk.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that causes a lot of problems. So again, those dominoes, once they start to fall, they have a whole number of unforeseen consequences. And what Christ maybe brings us to is be careful in the first instance when you're starting to make those judgments.
Right. I just think this week of people I've talked to about this very thing. And the first thing we have to do in helping people, particularly couples, but in any relationship, is to establish safety. Okay. Well, judgment is the enemy of safety. 1 John 4:18 talks about perfect love casts out fear. Fear is the enemy of intimacy and love. And later in the passage it says, if you fear, it's because of judgment. Okay. And that's
so really
the
this
core.
Judging is really a core issue, much more than people would normally recognize.
Absolutely. I think it's the core of the gospel, that God knows this about us, that we are dust, that we're sinful, that we're subject to these dynamics of fear and shame. That's the product of the fall. And the only antidote to that was total acceptance, no judgment. Romans 8:1, no condemnation. No condemnation. That's the most important passage for me in the Old New Testament.
Okay. So what about then later in this passage, Jesus says, don't cast your pearls before pigs. So there he seems to be saying, well, we do have to make some judgments.
We have to make discernments. If I could kind of just twist that a little bit. We need to be discerning. But that discernment needs to be tempered with a humility. And I think just before the pearls and the swine, there's that part about the log and the mote, right?
Yeah, about you've got to, don't criticize the splinter in someone else's eyes when you've got a log in your own eye.
And I think that passage flows. It's like, okay, judgment is toxic. Don't judge. We've identified the primary affects that are throughout the Bible, fear and shame. And then it's like, well, why do we judge? It's because it's so easy to see the fault of another and so difficult to see ours. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But that dynamic that Jesus touches on there of judging, of seeing the log, the speck in the other eye is so easy and so hard to see the log in the own eye, is really crucial to understanding why judgment is so toxic. In addition to the fear it sets up, it also sets you up to be blind to your contribution to the problem. And if I have a contribution to the problem and I don't see it, it's not going to be a good solution. So that's a pull toward humility and awareness that's very difficult for human beings to have.
So what do I need to do to be able to see?
Yeah. you have to be able to make it safe enough for your friends to tell you the truth.
Which is hard to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that means you really have to be discerning about your friends.
Okay.
Because not all friends will provide the safety you need for truth.
Okay.
And that's a difficult process. Having friends that you trust enough that you're willing to open up to let them speak truth to you, at least their truth. Now, that's an issue too. But you have to make it safe enough. And what I have to do with couples, I mean, the primary target of early intervention is make it safe. Make it safe to say what's in my mind. And then we can have the beginning of a solution that has all of what we need on the table.
Because as long as I'm holding everything inside,
Right.
I'm not going to get any resolution.
And if I'm not looking at my contribution, I don't have half the puzzle. It's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces.
Okay.
And the judgment and the blindness kind of set up that cycle.
So if we were to think psychologically about like one thing we could do to be healthier in this area, like, you know, make it simple for me, what should I do?
When you experience a problem with another, if we put it in a relationship,
Okay.
because this is talking about.
And this
then-
could be a friend at work, this
Right.
could be someone in my family.
Right. The natural response when someone wants to complain to me is I want to explain, which really is a defense. I want to get defensive. I want to tell them why what they're saying about me isn't true, even if it's benevolent. That is, oh, I didn't mean to hurt you, let me tell you. What I tell people is stop, ask questions. The truth in Covey got this. He said, seek first to listen, seek first to understand, then to be understood.
So don't go right to defensiveness. Try to hear what the other person is saying.
Be absolutely curious what's behind that person's complaint.
Okay.
Be real curious and make sure you fully understand it. What's the passage in James? Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the antidote to judgment.